Hi, this is Rachel again. Thank you for listening. Now, this subject today is going to be, I'm calling it the ultimate method of divination. Divination, as I'm sure you know, means the method you use for reading people, reading situations, reading the future. Some people call it fortune telling. That's a bit old-fashioned because fortune is fate, and we are working on the understanding that once you're in full consciousness, your life isn't fated. You create it. You can meet your destiny more easily, but fate, I see fate as a very old-fashioned concept, because people used to be victims of circumstance to a very extreme degree, and you very often could see their fate because they were unlikely to get new information that would allow them to change what was coming. Sometimes they could. So the ultimate method of divination, I'll get to that. Methods of divination. The one I started out with when I was very young was doing the I Ching, the Wilhelm translation, throwing 3 coins, not the more complex method. And I used to kind of scare myself to death with the I Ching. Try very hard to understand it, and I do believe that all those intense efforts to understand mysteries contributed to me becoming a deeper person. Then, people started showing up with tarot cards, and it's very funny. I mean, the Rider-Waite deck was the first one I saw. Now there are hundreds and hundreds of decks. But when I was very young, there were other decks, but, everyone had the Rider-Waite. I still like it best of all. I like the images. Cards don't work very well for me, and it's a funny thing. I don't seem to have a lot of faith in cards. There must be a story behind that, I think, but I had always wanted to learn palmistry, and then I got it came up in my life, I'm going to learn palmistry, I'm going to do palmistry. And to me, that was quite superior to some of the methods, where it teaches you so much about the body, because the hand is an extension of the brain. Every part of the body in some way is an extension of the brain, and it's connected to every other part. But the hand does contain a kind of map of your brain, and it contains a map of your life, and it contains many signs to do with your body and your health and the way you function. And interestingly, the lines are put on your hand. If you don't believe in these things, or you don't have any understanding of these things, or even myself when I was a small child, I thought they were just creases, the lines in the hand from where you fold your hand up. But once you learn to understand what they mean, they're incredible, and it's obviously no accident that you have the hand that you have. The eye is another extension of the brain. Really, the eye and the hand are part of the brain. That's why, when I was at art school, we were told, draw every day, draw all the time, from life, and you will get a coordination, synchronicity between your hand, your eye, and your brain. In other words, your eye sees something, goes into your brain, and your hand draws it. And if you do it enough, or you're very gifted, what you draw will, resemble very closely what you're looking at. Everyone will know what you've drawn. And it can be really marvelous. But one way, the main way, the most usual way to get that going is to just draw all the time from life, and then your eye, brain, and hand synchronize, and you can do incredible drawings. it's interesting. That just came up now, because I've heard it so many times. I understand it. I've experienced it. But what's happening is the eye, the brain, and the hand are one organ. However, we have lines put on our hand and various things that will show past, present, and future, and they can change a bit. And the little, small lines on the hand can change. But basically the main lines tend to stay throughout life, and with application they can be read. I believe some people can read the hand pretty well without actually being trained or learning. In fact, that happened to me to a degree. I remember meeting a gypsy from France in about 1973, and she was amazing. But she came from a gypsy family, and she was a real Romany. And all her family had died from alcoholism. But she was a very cheerful, happy soul. Now, she read my hand, and I don't believe that anyone taught her how to do it. I think she just looked at the hand and she knew what everything meant. Anyway, she said two things that stayed with me after all this time. One was, you will always have trouble from a woman. And so far she hasn't exactly been wrong. My problems are with women. I have very few problems with men. I mean, if I was living with one right now, I might have a problem, because when I've been living with a man, I've often found certain aspects problematic. But my biggest sort of, what can I say, like a bogeyman, would always be some woman that has it in for me, or it's just very difficult to deal with or something. So she was right about that. And then the other thing she said is, you'll be very good at something. And at the time I just left art school, and was hoping to be a professional artist. And I said, will it be art? She said, no, you'll be very, very good at something though. And then the funny thing was, it turned out to be palmistry, 12 years later, I guess, which is a long time in your 20s and 30s. But she wasn't told what it would be. Usually when we read someone, we can tell them a lot about their vocation, but if they don't know what it is, they'll just be given a good push in the right direction to find it. They won't normally be told what it is. Sometimes, yes. But mainly there's something about finding it for yourself, which is strengthening and encourages independence, or whatever it does. They don't tell you most of the time. So she didn't tell me what my vocation was, but it started with palmistry. And someone told me to get a crystal ball because people wanted more than just seeing your hand. So I got a crystal ball, and that was very powerful to work with, a bit too powerful, and never worked with cards. It's never worked for me, and parapsychologists won't test card readers because the cards make it too easy. But for me, they don't make it easy. The more I have divested myself of methods and props, in a way, the better it's been. Certainly, been more fluent and flowed more. So, what other methods do people use? Well, there's psychometry, which can be useful, and, a couple of times or so when I found it difficult to get to the truth about someone, I had them hand me something that belonged to them, and I'd hold it. You may hold it in your left hand. You just relax and breathe, and you start to see things, and you can tell the person. One lady handed me a set of nail clippers, those ones that you kind of snap. And I just saw this mad snapping with these nail clippers, and I realised that either she was very angry or they actually belonged to someone who was very angry. I think she was very angry, but it was so long ago that I don't remember the whole story. I just remember seeing this sort of mad snapping nail clippers and realising that the person operating them was very angry. So psychometry, holding things. There's things like clairaudience where you hear. Now, I don't get a lot of clairaudient things. My work is extremely visual. When I first started, I would see the actual words like on a ticker tape, and I could read them off the ticker tape to the person. I don't do that now, but there is that visual component, and then there's seeing, some people call it clairvoyance, remote viewing, which is also seeing, reading the Akashic records. So I'm a seer as well as an Akashic record reader, as well as, I would say, clairsentient. I feel things a lot. And I like to, now I don't use any techniques, any props, anything like cards or crystal ball or palm. I like to get everything to synchronize. If my feelings are telling me something, what I'm seeing and what I've observed about the person and all those different things all say the same thing, and it kind of locks in, and I know it's right. If I don't know I'm right, I normally tell the person I'm reading, I think this is 90% likely to be right, or 70%, or I'm not quite sure. Bear with me while I go a bit further and get more information. As far as I'm concerned, the way I work is the easiest way to work, because basically, you just give me a phone or put someone in front of me, and that's all I need. So it's simple. Some people do love a sort of beautiful table with a purple shawl draped over it and crystal balls and flowers, and I do like flowers. I love all that. It's gorgeous to look at. And it, maybe helps, like meditating helps. It lifts you that little bit higher, meditating first. Definitely, having incense and flowers and a beautiful environment is very conducive, and you may get that little bit of extra information. What Spirit does with vocational readers, people who are going to have a career doing readings, is they start you off in very difficult situations. So it helps you to become confident, because you realize you can work under just about any circumstances. So that gives you that extra bit of confidence. You have worked in any circumstances, you've worked surrounded by people who want you to fail. You've worked in establishments owned by people with a lot of darkness, because many of the establishment owners do have a lot of darkness. You've worked in psychic fairs, noisy situations where there's a black witch in the next row doing spells to make everyone go to them, and it's really upsetting the energy. You've worked with people who are really ill. You've worked in situations where you're personally very upset or pretty ill yourself, and you realize that the work, in every situation except the absolute worst, you can have the work come out exactly the same. So I think that's just something you learn by doing thousands and thousands of sessions. What other methods are there? Well, there are all kinds of, like tea leaves, if you can read, you can really read anything. You know, if you can really read. You know, I can read tea leaves. I could read entrails, but I wouldn't want to. And I don't see the need for something as grisly as that. You know, you can read tea leaves, you can read clouds in the sky, you can read anything and get the same information. So I just am like, why not just read direct? But then I'm very experienced, you know, not just from this life too, but, you know, 33 years in this life and other lives, quite a lot of other lives doing divining. But I tell you, you can read anything. Everything's the same. I mean, everything is in everything. The whole universe is in everything you can look at. And if you look at it the right way, you can get your answer from that. And you have to be in the right space, which is, I would say, in questioning mode or receptive mode. And I am in the belief that any question can be answered. You know, some answers are harder to get. Pulling information from other planets is more difficult. It hasn't been here before. But you can get it. You can get the information. The more you do it, the easier it will be. So cards are lovely. If you like cards, I love to see them. It's weird. I know the card readings people have done for me have not been that great. You know, they haven't been 100%. That doesn't mean that the right person can't give the right person that 100% accurate reading using cards. I'm trying to see, there must be other methods. There must be lots of other methods. Well, there are runes. Someone sent me a set of runes. And they're very nice, you know, carved wood in a little wooden box. But I found them a bit scary. But there are people who are masters of runes and they read them brilliantly. So it may have something to do with what you've done in other lives or what culture you've been in a past life where you did this kind of work. But for me, I guess what I mean by the ultimate method of divination is kind of not using anything, it's using yourself. Reading yourself very accurately, your responses to things and to people, because somehow it's all inside of you. It is all inside of you. I mean, these other methods are just a way of bringing out your innate knowing. It's all in your unconscious. Everyone knows everything in their unconscious. And it's a matter of accessing it. So if you keep working on accessing it, you get better and better at it, you know, being born being very intuitive is a plus. Some people are definitely more intuitive than others. Everyone is more intuitive than they realize, just about. I mean, babies are intuitive. If the wrong person picks a baby up, the baby just starts crying. And the baby doesn't start asking itself, do I like this person? Why don't I like this person? You know, is anyone going to be embarrassed if I scream my head off? The baby just screams because it feels wrong. And that means there's something is wrong in some way. Something's out of balance. So the baby is registering very accurately what's going on. And, you know, train those babies, eventually they're still registering everything accurately, but they don't know it. So again, you know, we do this work by getting back to a more primal state, a more sensitive state, more primal state, being closer to nature. And I believe that all that information is available, and it's actually available to everyone. I realize that there's a huge spectrum of sensitivity and abilities within the human race. And while everyone has some way of being wired up to be intuitive, instinctive, you know, everyone doesn't have a third eye. There are beings who are not fully human who don't have third eyes or who don't have heart chakras. But I'm talking about normal people, really. They have it. And they may be afraid to develop it or use it. Afraid to notice what's going on there. But you say seeing someone in their true colours, which is really saying that I can see your aura. Although most people aren't aware that they can see your aura. They're seeing it. We're seeing it all. It's just that we've shut it down. We shut down to it. Where perhaps the psychic, the clairvoyant, you know, the strongly intuitive person, they haven't shut it down nearly so much. They've kept it open. They've kept it going. Maybe partly from having a super strong ability or being so much that way that they can't really suppress it. But it's there in all of us. I'm trying to think if there are other there are lots of methods of divination, as I say, there's no doubt about it. But to me, the ultimate is that you just use the abilities that you kind of carry within your body or within your being. There's no need for anything else. Some methods, you know, do add a little something extra, though. I was in this really great tea house that's near where I live. It's called the English Tea House. And it's in my favourite place in the world. And people, you know, at the table, we were having sort of really nice kinds of tea, like lapsang souchong. I don't know, all different kinds of tea. And the leaves, lapsang souchong tea leaves, you know, they're not cut so small. And they're sometimes very interesting shapes. So a friend had me read tea leaves for everyone at the table because they bring you pots with loose tea in it. And that was really quite a charming experience. But I'd certainly got a lot of information, but the tea leaves were making really nice pictures, especially the lapsang tea leaves were making really charming kind of pictures. Looked like you know, Chinese bas relief carvings they used to do in wood and so on. You know, with like lots of little houses and tiny bridges and pointy little hills and trees and, you know, everything sort of crammed together but extremely picturesque. It was kind of coming out like that, and I was able to, I was being shown lots of information about the person. So you don't have to figure it out. I mean, about their life, their future, whatever it was they were wanting to know. I was being shown. You don't really figure it out, you just go with it. And, excuse me, you will get the information. You know, it's trying too hard is the big block. You know, then I do read the Akashic Records, which is the record of everything that has been, will be, and is now. I guess the will be, I think that shifts, you know, it mutates. At any given moment, what will be is a certain way. But there are so many variables. Some of it can change. I've always believed there's an underlying framework, you know, that there's certain things that are destined, and those destined things happen. But I think even some of the things that people think are destined are more tenuous than they realize. You know, that wonderful teacher Krishnamurti, Annie Besant discovered him in India. I think he was 12 years old. And she knew she had a destiny to find him. She knew he had a destiny to come to the West. and that he was going to be the second coming of Christ. And it, you know, the Theosophists, they kind of had seen all this and been shown all this by the Ascended Masters. So anyway, it was his destiny, and he came to England with Annie Besant. I guess, I don't know how old he was, 12, 14. And all these people, were kind of worshipping him, treating him as the master. And he rejected the role. I mean, he spent his life as a spiritual teacher, but his teaching was so much about rejecting anything that had gone before, and prearranged roles, and people's expectations and beliefs. I mean, that's just the product of their mind. It's neither here nor there. So he spent his life as a very great teacher. And I studied a lot of his work, and quite difficult to follow sometimes, but really worthwhile, very profound teaching, very simple. And he sort of did it and he didn't do it. He was a very great teacher. He, facilitated a great deal of transformation. Schools were started. He started schools, or schools were started that he designed and arranged, to raise children in a different way, a more loving way, a more thoughtful way, to develop their potential. He was a phenomenon. But he didn't do what the prearranged thing was, for sure. Now, somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but some teacher or channeler, somebody quite sort of respected and, advanced, erudite, whatever, had said that because he rejected the role of the second coming of Christ, World War I and World War II happened and a lot of darkness came to the world. And I have no way of knowing if that's correct. I mean, I try to stay open to everything. I don't see anything wrong in what he did. I mean, the role of a Christ, the role of a Messiah is a horrible role to have. Having people worshipping you and getting in their heads about you and leaning on you that much, and, having to kind of carry a lot of very messed up beings with you to stop them from going out into the world and being even worse. Which is what Messiahs, one of the things the Messiahs do, is just, it's so heavy. And I don't believe Jesus was anything like the church thinks he was. I mean, yes, he was loving and powerful and compassionate, and he could do stuff. He could do shit for sure. But just like, with Mary, his mother, I think they twisted it even more. Like she was kind of a neutered female. Not true at all. So, and then when these masters died, Jesus and Buddha and many others were perfect masters, they were in God consciousness all the time, I believe. The people who've been around them who didn't get completely, didn't get there, didn't become fully enlightened, they start writing things down. They're really confused. We know that the words of Jesus were written down like 300 years after he died, so I don't know why they still seem to be so powerful. It's all full of mysteries to me. I mean, they do. I don't think you could make them up, frankly, a lot of the things he's supposed to have said. They're just too pure. But it's a horrible life, having all those people projecting on you. And I mean, that happened to Krishnamurti. He was dealing with every kind of idiocy, basically. And every so often, you know, and he did discourse, he did public talks, mainly. He would take someone on a journey. He would go on a journey with someone that would totally unlock something, and there they would be in that other place with him, because he, you know, was tended to be in that higher place. And you could read all the words and follow the process. And like something would really, really happen with those people when they got it. You know, he's a fabulous guide. So I have incredible respect for that being and a lot of love for that being. And I know his teachings helped me a great deal. I never met him. Some friends of mine saw him at Glastonbury, I think, when he was really old, like he was about 86. And it was in about 1984. And he passed away quite soon after that. But I always had the most profound respect for him. So when someone says he rejected the role of the Christ and therefore all the world wars happened, I don't know. There's a lot of wrong channeling about too. You know, there are a lot of thought forms and projections and programs out there that people can channel. And some of them can be extremely convincing. You know, so that's another thing. If you just are living your life simply and you get a very strong feeling or a vision about something, it's probably correct. But if you have any kind of pretensions to being a channeler, a teacher, you have to know something about how it works, because there is a way to avoid picking up things that are unreal. And there are certain people that can avoid that, and there are other people who can't. And there's so much of that stuff out there. The way I do various things to try to ensure that I don't give out false, wrong, or mischievous information. And I'm one of the lucky channelers in that all the information comes through my higher self. So it's coming from the soul level, which means that, you know, I'd have to be quite drunk for entities to come in and start messing around with the energy. And even then, I know if it's right or wrong, because I've done it. I mean, drunk 2 glasses of wine. I've done it. And, you know, it really knocks down your efficiency. But you still have ways to tell if it's right or wrong. Another thing I do is, I can't think of the word, it's not triangulate, it's like joining up the dots. It would be like a picture in dots, and then on a piece of paper that's transparent, more of the dots, like some of the pictures on one sheet and some of the pictures on another sheet. Maybe you've got lots of sheets, and then it's like tracing paper, and each has a bit of the drawing in dots. And you put them over each other until the dots superimpose and align, and then you can see what the picture's of. The information has to come from more than one place. Unless it's coming through so powerfully, it's undeniable. But a lot of the time with people, I'm, you know, searching around, because some questions are difficult. Sometimes there's a lot of emotion around the question, which emotion distorts this work, and the reader has to be detached. I mean, that's why people consult readers. More than anything, it's because it's someone who's not involved, and therefore they can have the overview and see the whole situation. And then, of course, we do channel. I don't have some guide in the astral plane. I basically I'm really open to channel from ascended masters or from the creator or from the soul, the higher self. And it's various combinations of those things. You know, I don't have, I mean, I can channel someone who's passed and they're living on the astral plane. And if someone really wants that, you know, I'll do it. But, while it's exciting to me to make someone feel better, to help someone to feel better, you know, about the loss, and that is good. I don't get a huge kick out of proving the continuance of life. You know, because when I really think about it, it's kind of obvious that one has existed and will exist for a very long time. And in many places, and even in many places at once. So I hope I didn't get off the track here, but thank you very much for listening, and I hope we can connect again. You take care of yourself, and if you have any suggestions for subjects, I'd be most grateful to have ideas. And if you would like to donate to my work, I will post a email for PayPal. And if you would like to have a personal private reading by phone, you can have my personal email, which is racheldgm@aol.com. But I'll put that underneath the video as well. So again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.